It's been a long time since the last episode of Game of Thrones aired. 4 years, in fact. But that doesn't mean we've forgotten about Khaleesi or Khal Drogo, for that matter, because these 4 years have given everybody enough time to talk about their feelings and opinions. That includes Jason Momoa's frustration on set and Emilia Clarke's first moments on set that burst her into tears. Keep watching to find out more. First off, why was Jason Momoa so frustrated on set? From its very beginning, Game of Thrones has become the benchmark for fantasy TV series. The show's not only notorious for its brutality, gore, and nudity, but it's also evolved into a cultural icon over the years. During the first season of the series, intimate scenes were set up for Emilia Clarke and Jason Momoa, who's famous for their violent performances as Daenerys Targaryen and Khal Drogo on Game of Thrones. It was Emilia Clarke's first acting role, and she eventually said that Jason Momoa's involvement in those intimate scenes was a blessing. You all probably know what we're talking about already. It's no surprise that Emilia Clarke felt safe because Jason Momoa is a protective and compassionate actor. It makes perfect sense for him to care about Emilia Clarke as a person, which is why he was so frustrated when she was stabbed in the Game of Thrones finale. Let's talk more about Momoa's reaction to the finale. It should come as no surprise that Jason Momoa wasn't too pleased with Jon Snow's murder of Daenerys. It wouldn't be shocking if any one of you had a shocked reaction because literally everybody loved Khaleesi, so there was genuine emotion when she got betrayed by her newfound lover. We love Jon Snow too, though. As Jason Momoa continued to see Drogon's response to Daenerys' death, the rage only intensified. After the episode aired, Momoa expressed his frustration with the scene and said he would have loved to see Drogon melt Jon Snow to ashes instead of Khaleesi being killed off. It's not very surprising that Jason Momoa's response was so intense. Aside from the fact that he has built a career on that energetic attitude, he and Emilia Clarke have been close friends ever since they shared a screen in Game of Thrones Season 1. Jason Momoa didn't specifically criticize the showrunners Dan Weiss and David Benioff in his opinion of the finale. In fact, he thanked them and opened the live broadcast by sharing his thoughts and feelings and saying he owed his success in his career to their casting. Let's just say he didn't join the petition to have the 8th season of Game of Thrones rewritten. All that's left for Game of Thrones fans to do now is to keep dissecting the conclusion and then move on to talking about the prequel, House of the Dragon, which recently aired on HBO. Now for Jason Momoa being more emotional than Emilia Clarke. In the first season of Game of Thrones, Emilia Clarke played shy and horrified Daenerys Targaryen, who had been sold off to a monster. But as it turned out, he wasn't really the monster she thought, nor was the actor who played Khal Drogo. Even though they both didn't have a lot of screen time together towards the end of the first season, they still had some very private exchanges throughout the course of the 10 episodes. But were they really that private when everything was out in the open? Like, quite literally. Anyway, Emilia Clarke apparently had no idea about the scenes involved in the project because she had just graduated from acting school. Despite taking on the task head-on, Clarke acknowledged that she was lucky to be starring alongside Jason Momoa because she only had kind things to say about him. Not to mention, Momoa was sobbing more than she was, according to Clarke. Only now does she fully realize how lucky she was, since there was a boatload of other potential scenarios. He was always asking, "Can we get her robe? She's trembling." It goes without saying that he was really kind, caring, and concerned about her as a person. We wouldn't expect any less from him either. The man's a big old softie. Next up, Emilia Clarke's thoughts about Game of Thrones. Daenerys Targaryen, who was plagued with the same insane sickness that destroyed King's Landing, followed in the footsteps of her father. Similar to her on-screen alter ego, Daenerys Targaryen, Clarke herself went through a lot of personal changes throughout the years of filming. As time passed, Game of Thrones turned into one of those shows with the power to influence a generation's culture. The series is based on George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire novels, which gave rise to spin-offs and a whole world like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Similar to Game of Thrones, its prequel, House of the Dragon, was also released recently on HBO Max and became very popular. But to be honest, we would have loved it a little bit more if we somehow got a small small cameo from Khaleesi, don't you think? And yes, we know it's a prequel series, but it still would have been awesome if the showrunners figured something out. Let's talk about why Emilia Clarke cried on her first day. Even though Emilia Clarke has been busy since Game of Thrones wrapped up, she still remembers her first day on set like it was yesterday. Since the conclusion of the show, the Game of Thrones cast has spoken out a lot about it. Emilia Clarke has said that she shed a few tears on her first day of acting as the famous Daenerys Targaryen, but not for the reasons you might imagine. The actress sobbed after having an embarrassing experience, although there is a chance that she just might have been overwhelmed to be playing the part. While filming a sequence in which her character had to ride through a bamboo field, the 22-year-old actress fell from her horse, but when she realized that everyone in the cast and crew in the area had seen her embarrassing moment, she broke down in tears. It makes sense too, because this was her first acting job, and it was probably her first time on a horse too. To add some theatrics to the mix, it was raining as well. All Clarke remembers is falling off the horse and still trying to act, hanging on for dear life while shouting, "Please stop filming!" To make matters worse, the whole crew was watching, so of course she cried, which was a perfectly natural response. We would have cried too. Thankfully, things got better as she spent more time on set. Moving on, did any of the other cast members face difficulties? The cast of Game of Thrones sat together and shared their experiences in an exclusive special called The Cast Remembers before the last season of the show premiered in 2019. Arya Stark's actress, Maisie Williams, said that her first day on set was also unforgettable, like Clarke's, but for other reasons. She admitted that while portraying the second youngest Stark child, she completely lost herself in her imagination and thought that everything she was filming truly happened and that she was actually in Westeros. Not to mention, even the legendary Kit Harington, aka Jon Snow, has admitted to feeling anxious on his first day, so it's obvious that Emilia Clarke wasn't the only Game of Thrones actor to have some anxiety on the first day of filming. That's not all, because Sophie Turner was also terrified, allegedly. When she initially started on Game of Thrones, Sophie Turner, who played Sansa Stark, was as nervous as her co-workers. She recalled feeling overwhelmed and afraid at the thought of working with talented actors like Sean Bean, Mark Addy, and Lena Headey in her interview. Now, for how Game of Thrones propelled her career. It's clear from Clarke's extensive list of acting accomplishments that she was originally cast in the role of Daenerys Targaryen, which helped her break into new career opportunities. It probably also increased her acting range and propelled her to new heights. Her roles in Me Before You and Kate in 2019 are two of her most recognizable appearances since the debut of Game of Thrones. The Secret Invasion miniseries that Clarke is presently filming for Marvel Studios is also scheduled to premiere in the spring of 2023. Emilia Clarke has always been a fan of Game of Thrones. In fact, it was her passion for the show that inspired her to first try out for the part of Daenerys Targaryen. She told Metro back in 2011 that she had always wanted to be Khaleesi since she had always been a fan of the HBO series. She was immediately sold on taking the role when she learned that the show would include dragons because if you can call dragons heroes at all, she has always regarded them as wonderful anti-heroes. She obviously couldn't contain her excitement because she immediately went and bought the books to start preparing for the test. Not to mention the showrunners were so impressed with her auditions and how perfectly she fit the part, they gave her the job right away after only a few auditions. Finally, how did Emilia Clarke feel after getting the part? Well, these are her words. "I was devastated, but probably in a good way because she was excited to get selected. More so, we think it probably had to do with the fact that she didn't really know what to do because she had just graduated from acting school. Of course, she didn't turn down this amazing opportunity, but there was just one catch for taking the role, which was to be allowed to read the books first. Seems fair. She probably had that condition because it would have helped her to get to know the character better, and she definitely did because there's literally anybody can imagine portraying Khaleesi now. And to wrap it all up, Emilia Clarke did cry during her first time on the set of Game of Thrones. Although it might not seem important to those who aren't familiar with this amazing show, those who are familiar know that she always ran the risk of dying while playing Daenerys Targaryen for HBO. She also saw an execution on the first day she worked there, but she's Khaleesi. She could handle it. That's a wrap wrap for this video. Do you think Game of Thrones would have become as popular as it did without Emilia Clarke? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.